So, Corey Jones, I am so happy to have you here with us for this conversation. We came together through a mutual hero, Dana Middleton, who connected us. And it's so interesting because we're both doing the similar work on different sides of the coin. And we both come from an agency background. We're both creative people. And so I was so excited to get to know you a little bit. And I'm really excited to get to know you even better today and also to hear about the amazing work that you're doing with PrismWork. But just to kick us off, I'm hoping you can introduce yourself and share a little bit about your story and maybe illuminate a couple of the lessons that you've gathered along the way.
Well, first of all, I'm very excited to be here. I appreciate the invite. Yes, Dana is a hero, and so appreciate her making this connection and the time that you've set aside to have this conversation with me. My journey has been a winding road, Brooke. So it started a couple of decades ago now. I mean, going into college, I was great at math and science, so everyone told me you should be an engineer. And right out of high school, I went into an engineering program with an internship at one of the big semiconductors here, Texas Instruments, working on their defense or radar for airplanes. And I was like, wow, this should be a really cool experience. But I found myself in a room with no windows and with a bunch of balding older dudes that I was just like, I need to get out of here. So I knew that was not my jam. And at the time I had a radio show in college, and I said, why don't I take some production classes? And I did. And I fell in love with it because I was able to create something, imagine something, and then produce it. And people responded extremely well. And that's all it took for me to be hooked and sold. And from then on out, I said, I want to be creative. I want to communicate. I thought at some point I was going to own and start a film studio. But what I ended up doing was just continuing to work in the creative arts and communications. I was grip on commercials. I edited, I wrote, I just tried to dig my hands into as many things as possible and to express myself. And in every turn, it was great response. People were saying I added value. So that continued the encouragement and my journey. And one of when I really, really knew it, I took a few jobs out of college. I freelanced a lot, and I started working with TD Jakes, who is a big preacher, has a huge non-denominational church here in Texas. And I was able to work on his program every week and produce content that I could get an instant response, understand what was funny, what made people be sentimental, what made them want to join and join the cause. And it was there where I started to really understand that I had a gifting to tap into the human experience and tell a story where others would say, I feel something that makes me want to do something. And that was what continued to drive me. I was an individual contributor trying to figure out how to tell the best story. And at the time, I wasn't necessarily thinking that I was going to lead any huge organization. It was really just about what is providing food on my table and allowing me to have fun while doing it. I kept saying, I don't want to go back to the room with no windows. And so I could get out into the world. I could meet new people. I could interview them. And that was where I flourished. And so I kept seeking those opportunities out. So I from TD Jakes, I went to agency here, a video production agency, and I produced a lot of content for broadcast television and a lot of corporate clients. That was really my entry into the corporate space of trying to navigate a creative mindset and skill set and marry that to a very patriarchal, homogenous way of doing business. And I would always be sitting on the other side, the fun party experience for those brand managers or those people that were stuck in rooms with no windows and they wanted to create fun content. So I realized that I was very blessed and honored to be in the position I was, to be able to have fun in my career.
Mhm.
But I also was experiencing discrimination. I was being excluded. And a lot of my peers, I saw how they were treated in the workplace. And I said, if ever I were to be in a position to lead, I know how I would want to do it. And I would want it to be differently. And that was really where I started to focus, of course, on the craft, but really, how do I rise through the ranks? How do I get those titles? How do I start to be in those positions where I can make decisions? And I started to realize that I just had to start where I was, continue to provide value. And in some places where I did butt up against a wall or glass ceiling, if you will, I adapted. I said, okay, let me take these skills elsewhere. Let me find someone who will appreciate them and figure out how to move forward. And I was able to do that successfully a few times until I landed as an executive creative director at a public relations firm at Golan. And I ended up ultimately, I think it was at the time, there may be more now, but of executive creative directors at holding companies, I was maybe one of only 7 Black executive creative directors. And of those, maybe one of those were women. So it was very rare to see me in those spaces, talking to CMOs, talking to those people who were making decisions about their brand and their messaging, for me to walk in and say I'm leading a team. And sometimes it was off-putting for some. And but I've gotten this, I won't say thick skin, but a resilience to understand that I brought a different point of view and perspective. I was there for a reason, and I brought something that was unique, and that was the reason I was successful and the value that I brought to the teams. In all of that, my promise that I'd made to myself of leading differently and choosing differently, it was all true. And that is where I found that I butt head the most with the corporate environment. Is this was before COVID and the pandemic, but I'm telling people, hey, sure, take off early and work remotely. You've got to pick your dog up from the vet, or your child is sick and you still want to do work. You got the tools to do that remotely. Let's work how to do that. You need to take additional time off, or you've got an opportunity to meet with your family and be away for 2 weeks, but still check in. I would be really collaborative and creative with my teams to say, how can we make it where you can flourish and still experience life? And it was at odds, and other teams would ask their managers, why can't our team be operated the way Corey's team was? And so I found myself at odds. But it was also the genesis of where I really wanted to focus on leadership in the workplace, and said, what I'm doing is repeatable. I can help others own their truth, be able to connect with others, and lead in a way that is not like the norm. And so that's why in 2019 left and started PrismWork, and said that the remit was, I want to focus on 21st century leadership. What does that mean? How do we define it? And how do we help others live it? And we developed HARDY, which is an acronym for humility, empathy, accountability, resiliency, transparency, and inclusivity. Those are the 6 skills that, after talking to leaders, after our own lived experience, after talking to behavioral psychologists and DEI experts, those are the skills that kept rising to the top of where, if you want to build cultures of belonging, if you want people to be able to, work their best work and perform at their highest, if you as a leader can unlock these skills and master them, you'll be successful. And all of that to say, from being a radio host to a producer to a creative director, all of those skills came into place. And what I've learned, of course, hindsight is 2020, but at every stop along the way, it's helped me have this bigger realization that everything's happening exactly the way it's supposed to. And that's what I've held on to, is on this winding path, because in it were layoffs and glass ceilings and challenges and times where I thought things would not work out. But in every instance, I just said, I'm going to show up and be here. And that's how I'm here with you. So I'm very grateful for all of the experiences, for the things that I've learned. It's not been as traditional, I think, as most paths, but I'm proud of the path that I have.
Thank you. That's such a great window in. It's interesting, as you were talking, we talked to a lot of leaders, mostly leaders like us who come from historically underrepresented groups. There's one of the observations, and actually there's a lot of research about this now, is that resilience that is cultivated as a survival technique is an Achilles heel, right? It's such a strength until you're so tired of fighting, right? But I just wonder about your experience of that, and have you found solace in the entrepreneurial, right? And how has that shifted not only the requisite resilience, but how has that shifted like the vibe around work and the vibe around the choices that you get to make every day in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I think I got a front row seat to the effects of the corporate environment watching my mom growing up. She was an oil and gas accountant for 25, 30 years. And at one place worked for almost 20 years and got laid off. And I was in high school, and it felt like at the time, like the biggest heartbreak for her, but I'm able to watch her be strong and say, we're going to be okay, and finding ways and getting a new job. But it was at some point, for whatever reason, it felt like you get a job and you keep it until you retire, and you don't have to change. At least that was what I thought as a kid and growing up. And then seeing that was really eye-opening. Mm-hmm. And then having my own experience of working places and being very committed and loyal and feeling like this is the one, this is the place. And they say, nope, this is not it. Helped me to just really realize that there's no job is my source. No job truly is where I'm going to find complete validation, complete acceptance, or all of my wins. And when I attach a lot of emotion to that being my source, and as a man, yes, a Black man, but even as a man, still the ego of wanting to protect and provide, it wears heavy, and it feels like a weight sometimes to carry. But when you start to say, this job is not the thing that is going to do it, that my source is tied to the gifts that I bring, that I've been imbued with, the connections that I have, the relationships that I've built, I'll be okay. Just that constant mantra of I'm going to be okay, and this is happening exactly like it's supposed to, is what drives me and keeps me moving forward. And again, I think having that realization of seeing my mom's experience in the corporate space and then having my own experience in the corporate space just really solidified that this life is worth living by making other people's lives better. Like, or for me, that's what it is. But for whatever your purpose, whatever's driving you, that's what this life is worth living for. And any job is just to pay your bills, eat food, and you get to a point where maybe you don't even need that job.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that comes with experience for sure. I mean, I know after I had a baby, I had an identity crisis because I just made stuff happen all day long. And then all of a sudden I couldn't get, nothing happened. We were alive at the end of the day. And that was like the job. So shocking because I was so type A and I just wanted to blast through. I had all kinds of plans that none of which manifested. Our culture so encourages us to just so completely link our identities to our work. And I think you bring up a really good point that there's so much more to each of us and all
That's
of
right.
That. Right? And it's a really important piece of the puzzle.
Even in this role as CEO, right? Like being an entrepreneur, and I love being an entrepreneur. I really do. But even that, it's not mentally healthy for me to act like my company, PrismWork, owns me, and that everything that I do is at the behest of this company. That I'm not psychologically safe if I'm thinking that way. I have to see PrismWork as something that I own, that I'm an owner of, and
Yeah.
that it's providing value to my life and the other and our other employees' lives, that they're joining because they're tied to the purpose. And this is an aspect of their life. It's not their entire, as you said, their entire identity.
Yeah. So tell me about, like, how do you bring that into other companies? But with the work that you do, how do you bring that to other folks?
The way that we're doing work now has changed. Of course, the global pandemic in 2020 disrupted everything, and everyone's been trying to figure out how to make that work. Do we do remote? Do we do a hybrid? Do we do everybody come into the office? But a lot of people aren't necessarily asking, how do we change the way we interact with each other? How do we be more empathetic? And how do we tap into the resilience that we have? And so the idea is helping people to understand that we're all people, the leaders, the middle managers, the individual contributors, we all have needs that are, of course, outside the workplace. But when we're aligned in purpose in our organizations, that it's much easier to be accountable and to show up on a regular basis and find out, okay, where can I provide value? If I come into the office today and we meet face to face, how can we move things forward? How can it be meaningful and not just coming in to come in, right? If I am in this meeting, what is the agenda? What are we going to accomplish? And being very purposeful and intentional with how we lead. And then also being willing to make space for others to share what's going on in their lives, because the things that go on in our lives affect the way we do work. And when you make space for connecting, being empathetic, being transparent in your communication, and in, of course, being inclusive, it allows people to let their guards down. It allows them to say, here's some of the challenges that I'm struggling with. Here's where I'm failing and I need some help. That tapping into that vulnerability. And that's what managers need to hear. They need to understand that the more vulnerable you are, the more trust you're going to endear from your group to say, here's why this is not working, and here's some alternatives to how we can move forward. So a lot of it is helping people understand that the status quo of holding things close to your chest, not communicating clearly, being so resilient and accountable that you're striving towards a goal at the expense of everyone else's health. Those are all notions that are in the past. Those are 20th century ideas. We are now in the 21st century, and it's time for us to think differently. It's time for us to care about the people that we're working with in a real level, because once you do and show that you do, the more willing they are to show up and do the work that we're all called to do.
Yeah. So everything you're saying makes total intuitive sense. But why is it so hard?
We've been conditioned to think that that's not what is going to work. We're conditioned to think that this deadline is so important that I've got to ask my team to work extremely late nights or over the weekends and not be willing to go to either the client or our boss or our leader and say, here's the obstacles, the challenges that we're facing. Is there any way to change the deliverable, change the timeline, increase the resources to really negotiate how to meet everyone's need while not burning out your team? We set a plan in place and we have to stick to that plan at all costs,
Right.
at no cost. And life's, it happens. It gets in the way. Supply chains issues happen where tankers get caught in the Suez Canal and our stuff is stuck in a container somewhere, or someone's parent got sick and they have to drop everything to go take care of them, or a pet got out and they have to go look for them. So life happens all around us. And when that happens, guess what? It affects that plan. You don't put in the plan that someone's child is going to slip and fall, or that someone might be sick and a team member might be sick for 2 weeks. But that stuff really happens. And as a leader, you have to be willing to adapt, to be creative, and say, either how can we continue to make this and everyone else keep their peace? Or how can we shift what the expectations are, right? How can I project manage this in a way where we still can meet the needs of all of our stakeholders, but like I said, help keep the mental health and physical health and well-being of the people that we're working with to accomplish it.
Yeah. It's interesting because we work with a lot of companies, and what we're hearing more and more from managers is like Gen Z, like the younger folks coming up, they're like, sorry, I can't do that. I have a wedding this weekend. And it's like, there's like an earthquake throughout the whole system because they couldn't imagine ever saying that to their boss. But that's part of what it's going to take, right? Like A plus B equals C. And when you change A, C changes, right? And whether you like the way that it's changing or not. And so I think it's so like the recognition that we're dealing with humans and life with humans is messy, but also like they're individuals involved. So I think it's such valuable work to get ahead of it, both on all sides of the equation. Everybody has been tuned into the way that DEI has shifted, right? And DEIB, I'll say, has shifted, and some companies are doubling down, and some companies are taking the opportunity to take a pass, unfortunately. But the interesting thing, like in your work and in our work, is it's not necessarily about DEIB. Like this is about great business, right? This is about performance. This is about results. This is about creating a space where effective people achieve results effectively. So I'm curious about your experience of that conversation as you're working with leaders, individuals, or companies.
Sure. I tell people all the time, I mean, because I mentioned it earlier, but just the way we're doing business has shifted and changed. Yeah. And as organizations, we are being called by so many different stakeholders to do different business differently. We're being asked by our customers. They want to be aligned with the organizations that they do business with. They're saying, before I give you my dollars, I want to know that not only do I believe in your vision and your purpose, but that you're being righteous, that you're taking care of the planet and the people that live on it. Our vendor partners, they don't want to work with companies or organizations that they're not proud of. Yes, that money can be good, but they also want to know that they're doing good in the world. Our shareholders are asking for it. I mean, as much pushback as we're getting on DEI and ESG, it's not going away. And shareholders are saying they want to be able to invest in companies that are making a real impact in this world. And then certainly our employees, where we come in, is our employees want to be tied to companies that they believe in, that have great products that are benefiting not just the customers, but the communities that we serve. And the communities that we serve, right? They may not be our customers, but where we do business, how are we impacting them? Are we bringing money in? Are we destroying their environment? Everyone's asking these questions of these leaders. So why not choose the right path, the good path, the one that's going to bring about good and make a real positive impact in our society? You mentioned younger generations, the Gen Zs and Gen Alphas and Millennials. They want to, that's who is moving into the workforce. As you said, a lot, the older people are moving out and they don't have those sensibilities, but these younger people, they do want to have that impact. And they do understand, they've seen their parents grind away for hours. And that's why they're saying, oh, I got a wedding to go to. It seems trivial, but they're saying, I want to enjoy the life that I have right now while I'm in it. And until we decide collectively as business leaders to say, this is a worthy path to pursue, this ensuring that our planet and the people that live on it are taken care of is a righteous journey. And it actually affects my bottom line. More customers are going to choose this product. More people are going to feel good about doing business with us, that it is a net positive for us as business leaders to choose this way, to choose to operate in that way.
Yeah. We are singing from the same hymn book. So I want to talk about you a little bit, though. I'm just curious about you as a leader in your days and how you navigate. Do you have any daily habits or rituals that you do every day or weekly?
I do. I make sure that I move on a regular basis. So whether that's a walk, spend some time outside, I just want to make sure that I'm continuously moving. I spend time with my family, and I just the one thing that I really do, even if the weather's not good and everyone's on there doing their certain things, I make a real habit of having gratitude, even for the small moments, because every day there's going to be some small thing that I accomplish, and I have gratitude for it, so that I can appreciate the big milestones even more so. So gratitude is a heavy practice that I have, of just being grateful for life, for my well-being, being in my right mind, for being able to send that email off and it not having any typos. Oh, that's great. So just having gratitude and finding those times to smile and encourage myself.
And tell me about, like, how do you overcome fears or setbacks?
So setbacks and failures, I think what's really important is to acknowledge them. I'm not saying ruminate or dwell on them, but to acknowledge them, because there is an opportunity for learning there. When you don't accomplish that goal, it seems harsh sometimes, like you're almost there. It seems harsh to call it a failure, but yeah, you only got 60% of the way there. How can we, if we do this again, how can we do it at 80%, or how can we get it completed all the way? And until you do that, there's no opportunity for growth. When it comes to fears, for what works for me is envisioning what happens on the other side of that fear. Like, how did I get into this position of being afraid? What's on the other side of that? What's the goal that's going to be accomplished? How is my life going to be changed? How is the life of others going to be changed? So I try to carry the expectations of all of the stakeholders in my life, including myself, and say, is it worth it for me to back down because I'm afraid? Or what magical can really happen if I say, I've got the goods? I may not see it yet, but if I just move, if I get into movement and action, there's something good that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's so great. Tell me about, how do you approach building your personal brand? I mean, you've spent your career building brands and generating content, and you're thinking about that. What about for you?
Great question. There were many years where I didn't think about it at all. I did just focus on other people's brands and how to tell their story. And it wasn't until I wanted to make an intentional leap into leadership that I realized I had to get better at understanding how I show up, where my skills are, what works for me. And I just tapped into all of my experiences of what I had done, what I'd accomplished. And I tried a lot of things. I've had a lot of different jobs and a lot of different experiences. And I was wanting to understand what worked, what made me feel good, what lit me up. And that was where I spent my time. And I started to understand that, yes, I'm in a creative space, but and as a creator, but I actually really do enjoy the process of creating. I enjoy the process of seeing something in my head, envisioning something that's not seen, and then manifesting that, bringing it to life, and being able to say, that's how I saw it, or that is even bigger and more imaginative than what I saw in my head, but it's here. And so just being a creator, tapping into that. If there's anything as far as an identity, there are many identities that I identify with, but being a creator is one that I love. And so that's what I leaned into, is how do I create not just fancy videos and graphics, but how do I create experiences for people? And how do I create learning opportunities? I spent a lot of time reading Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and going through that program and understanding that when I provide my perspective, people are actually they're able to appreciate life in a more meaningful way. Mm-hmm. And so I said, how can I continue to scale that experience and repeat that experience? And so I said, when I create things, this is what happens. And so just the creator identity, being Creative Corey, building PrismWork. While it's not advertising and marketing, it is creating a company that is making a huge impact. And I still feel that's a huge part of my brand. and why I wanted to take on this endeavor.
Okay. So community is an interesting one because part of our momentum metric, we measure the 5 C's, and community is one of them. And we started thinking, well, women in particular are going to score really well in community. And then when we started doing the research, we found that the opposite was true, because what we saw was we were all surrounded by amazing people that we would do anything for. But then when we asked, when's the last time you asked your community for help? It was like crickets, right? And so it's one thing to like have a strong community. It's another to really pull in your community and ask when you need to, and offer when you can. I'd love to hear your approach to how do you build your community, and how do you leverage your community, particularly. I mean, obviously we both spent years on the corporate side, and then it shifts a little bit once you take the leap and you have many generous people say, how can I help? But like, how do you take advantage of that? And what does that look like for you?
It looks like getting heavy alignment with people, making sure that you're aligned in purpose and passion with the people in your network. And then really the driving goal for me and thing that I live by is just, it's a cooperation, not a competition. When you see other people that are doing well, how do you celebrate them so that can be reciprocated? Like, it's that role, that position, it wasn't for you right now in this moment. It was for them. So celebrate them. Your time is coming. And so just having this posture of cooperation and celebration, not competition, has gone a long way in building lasting friendships, partnerships, and a strong network of people that are willing to show up when needed. And it's tough sometimes. We all get heads down with blinders on, living our life. And sometimes we think we're bothering other people by asking for help. The practice for me is to always continuously ask myself, when I need some help, I say, if someone were to reach out to me and ask for help, would I provide it? Right. The answer is always yes.
Always, yeah.
So I can't think that I'm the most unique person in the world that would only provide help to my network. So I ask. And so I encourage everyone to make the ask. I'm telling that to myself as well. I still do it. I get in my own cave and say, oh, I got to figure out how to do this myself and get the solution. But just using the words, I need help, go a long way. And even if that person in your network says, I can't do it, they're likely to point you in the right direction. Okay. It's not going to be a see ya, sorry for you, too bad, so sad. There is that reciprocal activity of, how can I meet the need that you're saying? So say you need help, and then be specific with the ask. What is it that you need? Don't be vague, is what I would do. And most people are willing to step up to the plate.
Yeah. It's just so, like, I feel like we can't hear it enough, right? Because the other thing we encounter so much is so many people are taught to keep your head down, work hard, don't ask for help, because it means that you're admitting that you don't know something, right? When in fact, there are plenty of other people who are asking who weren't taught that, right? So there's an unlearning piece of this. And then there's also a practice piece of this. And the more we can show up for each other and receive those asks, right, the easier it gets.
Yeah. And that goes right to that first 21st century leadership skill of humility. Yeah. A lot of people think humility is humiliation or cowering and saying, I'm not worthy, you are. And that's not it at all. Humility is just recognizing where you're limited, recognizing your own limitations, which means either you've got some work to do, or you can tap into or partner with someone else who does it at an extremely high level. And you guess what? You still get to reap the benefits of doing that, of that happening without you having to do it. So humility is that first step of recognizing, either I'm not as good as this as I need to be or want to be. Let me find some help. Let me learn some things to get better, or let me reach out to someone who can do this and ask for their help.
Can you share anything about a significant mentor or sponsor that you've had, a story about that?
So there's a guy named Martin Jones. I call him the best boss ever. I worked with him while I was at the Potter's House and TD Jakes, and he was brought in. He'd come from a studio. He had lots of years of experience in production and video. And I learned a lot in that regards, but I learned more about how he treated his teams and his crews, and how he celebrated them and didn't let things get taken or feel like things were taken away from him by celebrating his team. And it was so refreshing. It was something that I hadn't seen in a while, and it went a long way, and not just encouraging me, but I saw how it affected other people. Mm-hmm. And that was a practice that I took, that I said, I want to make sure that the people that I work with know that they're celebrated, know that I'm believing the best for them. And when they win, I am going to shout it from the mountaintops. It didn't have anything to do with me. It was all them. And that was just something that I'll always carry as a practice. And we still stay in touch. We just had lunch the other week and had a great conversation. And he's always, in his roles and the titles that he's had, been ahead of me. And I've been able to say, okay, Marty's doing this. Let me step up my game and get better and move. And the other thing that he's really impressed is just the importance of family and being tied to the people that you love, and making sure that you don't sacrifice them for the sake of work.
What book has greatly influenced you?
There's been a few. I'll go back to Simon Sinek and start with Why. I really just hadn't, until then, I felt like I was asking, okay, what's my purpose? What am I going to do? And not understanding how to do that. And not that that book gave me my purpose of what it was, but it really started the internal conversation for me of, why am I here? And what am I supposed to do? And I don't know if there was a right answer for that. What happened was, I started to reflect on what brought me joy, what brought others joy. And if I lean into that, I'm likely to be on the right track. And it's worked. It's worked very well. So I'll say that book, just really, as far as starting that internal dialogue of, how do I start to understand the value that I'm bringing into this world?
Tell me about your favorite inspiring quote or saying.
The best one that I have, because I have a whole garden of inspiration and quotes that I go to, and people that are still with us and some that are not, that tell me, continue to tell me that I'm on the right track or make me feel that way. And one of the ones, though, that keep rising to the top is the one by Afeni Shakur, who's Tupac's mom. And she says, I guarantee the seed that you plant in love, no matter how small, will grow into a mighty tree of refuge.
Wow.
Right? We all want a future for ourselves, and we must now care enough to create, nurture, and secure a future for our children. A lot of times my focus, my drive was about, how do I make my life better? How do I do this? And maybe it came late, but I'm glad that it came. Starting a family, having children, realizing they're going to likely enter a workforce at some point. I want it to be much better than the way I found it. So how can I go into action and do something that will shift and change that workplace?
Tell me about one word or a moniker that you would use to describe yourself.
Creative. In everything that I do, I love to see things come into fruition that haven't been there before. I love to see the status quo disrupted. And so creative, creator, if I can be seen as any of those things, it's a delight. And a lot of times that means doing art, making music, sure. But I feel there's so many ways to not just be creative, but to create and manifest. That's where I'm exploring now. Is I've had a lovely career of creating content and art and all of these things, but I really want to create an environment, a community where everyone can thrive, where everyone feels like they can do their best work, and inspire them to tap into their own inner leader, so that we can make a better world together.
What's one habit or change that you made in your life that made it better?
This was a habit or a practice introduced by my wife, my lovely wife, Erica. We started doing years ago a word of the year. And it never fails. I'll go into the year thinking, okay, this is what this word is going to mean. I already know what's going to happen. But that constant meditation, that constant focus on one word really brings to life how it shows up in your life on a regular basis. And by the end of the year, right when I'm getting tired of the word, it gets flipped on its ear and I see a completely different way of how that word shows up in my life. And sometimes it can be disruptive. Last year, my word was out front. I'd spent a career of being behind the camera or in the planning and strategy rooms and putting other brands, other people on stage or in the spotlight. And I could give great direction from the shadows. And that was wonderful, very comfortable there. And out front ended up challenging me in more ways to be center stage, to be more straightforward and outspoken. And I mean, ultimately, the flip on its head was Corey becomes CEO of PrismWork. So, I mean, every single year I have a word, whether it's vacation, because selfishly I want to go on vacation and didn't do any of that, or freedom. All of these words are things that it's inspired by. And I just learned so many things by meditating on it all year. This year it's embrace.
I was going to ask. That's cool.
This year is embrace, and it's all of the things, good and the bad, the highs and the lows, fully. And it's been a very interesting start to the year. I can't wait to see how it plays out the rest of this year too.
I imagine you embracing just like abundance. Like there's just so much.
Yes, bring it on. Bring it on. Yeah. I love it.
Last one. This is my favorite. What is your walk-up song?
Oh, you're starting an argument with myself. There are so many songs that get me jazzed and pumped. I love hip hop. I love it. I will say it depends on the audience. Now, Public Enemy and Fight the Power is gonna always be great for me. But I think I'm gonna go with Prince. Prince and Mountains. Mountains is a story that I think I love the groove. I'm always going to want people to want to dance, feel like dancing when I'm coming up, pump that energy up. So Mountains by Prince. And I could even go Baby I'm a Star by Prince. Like Prince has a few bedrock tunes that can get me excited, and I think get the crowd excited too.
That's awesome. I think we've done 300 of these, and I think you're the second person to say Prince. We're going to put together a Spotify list of everybody's, but they're like people who love Prince, and they know, right? But everybody else just like jams to Prince when they come on. So anyway, yeah. Excellent. Well, Corey, thank you so much for spending this time with me and with us. I'm excited to share your story with our audience, and just so grateful to know you. And I'm really excited about working together and helping each other on this journey, because I think we're values aligned to make the work world a better place. So
I love it. Doing what you're doing. It's amazing to be in partnership with people that see the world in this way. It's also part of why I started volunteering with Be Local Texas, a part of B Lab US and Canada, and working with B certified organizations, because I just so feel that making sure that you're making an impact as an organization socially and environmentally, in addition to your bottom line, is so important. And continuing to find companies and leaders at those companies that think that way is the way that we change the world, Brooke. And so I'm so, like you said, excited to be matched with someone else whose values aligned. And I'm always looking to expand that network and work with more companies and more leaders who want to take that challenge on and disrupt the status quo.
Likewise. Awesome. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.